If you're still tracking and categorizing all your own expenses, I have a message from your CPA. Stop. If you're listening to this podcast, chances are your goals include growing your sales. And one way to do that is delegating admin responsibilities by trading time for money. Rising Stock and MyBooks.pro is exactly what you need. Rising Stock is an all-encompassing financial tracking and coaching program where MyBooks.pro is exactly what it sounds like. They just do your books. You can choose to just have them track your expenses or take advantage of everything they have to offer. Do your business and your CPA a favor by scheduling a free intro call today at linktree/CSP60. That's linktr.ee/CSP60. That's linktree/CSP60 with a dot before the two E's. So when you're looking at making that jump from $1 million to $2 million, what's the most common success factors that teams achieve to make that happen?
Be patient. It's about having aggressive patience. Like, you can't just sit on your hands and just expect things to happen. Like the whole saying, good things come to those who wait. That's true to a degree, but it's mostly not in our business. Work as hard as you can, do as much as you possibly can, but gosh dang it, you can't expect it to flip in 3 months.
Thanks for joining us on the CSP Hot Hands 60 Minutes of Fire podcast. My name's Brett Wiggins, and I get to serve as your host. So what is a CSP? CSP is a Cutco sales professional. There are a lot of them out there, and they've all got a different answer to the question, why do you sell so much? Our mission is to find out the answer to that question from as many of them as possible. These next 60 minutes are designed for Cutco sales reps who desire to learn from our best in the field. So we interview top sales professionals from around the country with questions provided by their peers to make all that happen. 60 minutes of fire means we get straight to the point. Let's do it. Welcome to CSP Hot Hands 60 Minutes of Fire. We are in episode number 6, and I am so excited for our guest today. One of the reasons we have had to completely reconsider what is possible for an events team and also what it means to be an event coordinator, Dante Reynolds from our Williamson County office and Lone Star Division. Hey, anytime Dante references a resource that's available to us, he's going to share it with me after our time, make it available to you guys in our resource folder, which can always be found at linktr.ee/CSP60. That's linktree/CSP60 with a dot before the two E's. So Dante, if you have any scripts, templates today that you can freely share that aren't in the trust tree, don't feel the need to cover it in detail or share it right now. We can blast that out to the group afterwards and spend our time together on these hard-hitting questions that the CSP community has put together for you. I do want to directly thank those who submitted questions and had them chosen for this episode. Yes, we are getting to the point where I have to pick and choose, and I can't use all of them. They wouldn't be very fire questions without these people and their help. It would be more like coffee you made in the morning, but just didn't get to it until around lunchtime, like lukewarm at best. You're kind of ashamed to drink it. Kaiser Schwartz, Aaron Swintek, first-time submissioner. I may have just made up a word, Dante. I don't know. That's how you know it's a big-time episode when somebody had a first-time submission. And Jordan Thomas, my man JT. Thank you guys so much for submitting those questions. Dante, are you ready to jam?
Dude, I'm so hyped right now. I'm ready.
Hey,
lay it on.
Let's do it. He's better than ready. He's hyped. First of all, Dante, how long have you been selling Cutco?
So I actually started 14 years ago. I was a college kid in 2009 when I launched, February of 2009 of all times.
I was still in college in 2009. I was still in college in February of 2009 until I dropped out in March of 2009. So we were together. What is your yearly sales breakdown look like for your personal sales, Dante? What percent's the booth, repeat biz, all that good stuff?
Yeah, so most of it's through the booth. So I did about 300. I did a little over 300 last year, and I want to say it was probably about 75% through events, and that includes leads from events, directly at events, anything event related. And then the rest of the 20 to 25% remaining is going to be past customers, whether it's through service calls, service events, marketing, things of that sort. But as time has gone on, it's been slowly and slowly trickling to where a higher volume has been past customer. Now that just so many years of working events over this period of time, I just have a customer base that I got to do just take care of them and just keep growing sales with.
Stacks up. It stacks up for sure. And what I love about that answer, because we're going to get into this a little bit later, because I think a lot of times it's like, oh yeah, Dante, he's a coordinator. His main focus is coordinating. And I've heard people say that sell less than you on a yearly basis.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
so what I love is that your personal sales get completely overshadowed because of the amazing team you're building. So what I'm excited is any coordinators or team leaders out there listening, how do I do both? Who cares? What do I, or let's get love to hear that. What other titles do you have in your life outside of Cutco?
So I'm also married to my wife, Angie. We've been together for about 11 years, a little over 11 years now total. We actually met by selling Cutco back in the day, and we've been together ever since. And so friends at first for a while, and then it turned into something more. But yeah, she's been there since pretty much day one with me all the way through.
Shout out Angie. Oh, we need that spousal support, us leaders in the business. That's great.
Yeah, I can definitely say I wouldn't have made it this far without her for sure. She came in clutch many random times throughout my time with Cutco for sure. The outside of that, like I got, my mom, my stepdad, and everyone. And honestly, my life is really focused around work and family. Like I have my friends, my close friends I stay in contact with, but really as far as titles go, it's more of just try to be the best husband I can be and just try to take care of our future family.
Love it, man. Love it. Simple, simple,
Mhm.
simple, simple. Keep those priorities at the top. What's the last fun thing Dante Reynolds did when he wasn't slinging blades? It could have been yesterday, this morning. It could have been a year ago. What's the last fun thing that you did?
Last fun thing. Oh, shoot. Okay. Well, anyone that knows me knows that I'm based out of Austin, Texas. And most people don't know this, but you're not allowed to gamble in Texas. And I love to gamble, especially going to casinos. Like I've tried nightclubs, I've tried bars, I've tried downtown scenery like in my early 20s. And it was all fun for the time being, but it goes old very fast, at least for me. I know a lot of people still enjoy that. And for some reason, I have no reason why, where whenever I went to a casino for the first time and I just played all night long, I had that definitely beginner's luck where I just made a whole bunch of cash. I was super pumped about it and I was hooked ever since. So being in Austin, Texas, you're like 6 hours away from every single border of the state. And
I was gonna
so
say you're in like the worst spot for this passion. Yeah.
pretty much, yeah. Austin's a great city as well. I hope that doesn't get more people to move here. Everyone's moving here, but Austin's an amazing city in its own right, but there are no casinos. So when I get the opportunity, the last fun thing I really did was when I was doing a service event in Oklahoma and I got to go to the casino for like 2 days. And I don't know what it is. I just love sitting at a blackjack table and just making friends with anyone that breathes air that sits at that table. I could talk to them for hours.
The
So that was the last
energy
most recent fun thing I did.
is electric when you walk into a good casino. I personally love the vibe of like a Vegas. Like it's fun, but I hate I don't personally gamble much at all. Like I
It's okay.
might
I'll
do.
take you sometime. It'll be great.
Oh, that's great. And by the way, come on, Texas, the freest state in the what are we doing over there? Jeez. Um,
Brett, I always tell people Texas is the greatest country in the United States, but for some reason we can't gamble here. It's the weirdest thing.
now are you a plant in Austin or are you born and raised near at least?
Oh, I was wondering a plant. I was like, oh man, is this a philosophical question? I don't know. Someone asked me like what kind of tree I am at like the CSP retreat last year, and I had a funny answer for that, but that's for another time. No, so I was born in Houston. My family is from Houston, and I lived there till I was about, I want to say 6 or 7.
Yep.
And then my mom got married to this military guy, so we lived on a Navy base in Virginia for a number of years, and it
Was
didn't
it
work out.
Quantico?
No, I mean we lived in Newport News, Norfolk area
My
over
mom was
there.
born in Quantico, Virginia, on an airport base. And I didn't know
Oh,
if there
nice.
was, or military base. Yeah, I didn't know if there was any connection there.
No, I mean, I went there till I was about 13 years old or so, and
Yeah.
then they split up, and my mom got a job in Austin, and so I moved with her with my little brother, and I've lived in Austin ever since. So
But
it's
you're
been
a
about
leader.
20
You're a
years.
leader. You are an ambassador of Austin. You are not following the crowd. You're not on the bandwagon. What's your
Now,
best year ever for CPO?
It was this past year. I did a little over 300K, and so that was the Rolex year, and
Mm.
it was a really fun finish to the year last year. Had my best month ever in December. Yeah, I have it downstairs, but the
We'll trust you. We'll trust but verify. I'll look up.
yeah,
Yeah.
yes, it's yeah, it's all legit, it all tabbed, and so now so I got my watch and I did a little trade with it to get a different one, and I really like it,
Nice.
but anyways, I was more happy with just getting the stamp of like this. I don't know how other CSPs see this. Maybe Kaiser and Han can talk to this as well, but it's getting the Rolex and Cutco is just kind of like the staple of like checking the box. It's like the milestone in Cutco as a CSP of being like, okay, you're legit, like you know your stuff. And so
It's what the watch stands for. It's not the watch itself. It's cool. Like I always tell people I would never buy myself. I think they're valued at like 9 grand right now. However, when you won yours shortly after that, it was probably valued at like 15 grand on the black market. So you could have gotten a steal when you trade it. But it's like it's what it represents, right? It represents so much more than the watch.
yeah, and I think that's what people have to remember. So if there's something I could speak on with this topic here,
Mhm.
this was one of those things where I've been on a path to try and get the Rolex for probably about maybe only like 3 or 4 years now or so. And I was always that 1 year lag time behind because they would keep raising it steadily, which they should have. But
Yeah.
the I was always like hitting the previous year number and just trying to play catch up the whole time. And I love our team. I love the people that are part of the events program. But I knew deep down in my soul, even as a coordinator, it's easy to use the crutch of I'm so busy being a coordinator that I can't sell Cutco at a high level. I'm not saying you have to sell $1 million in a year like a number of people are doing nowadays, but I am saying is you have to be a leader to some degree. And that's really what it meant for me this last year was like, you know what, I really just got to get this done. And who knows if the Rolex is going to be available in the future? And there's always rumors that are out there about it. Hopefully it stays forever. It's the coolest prize we make, in my opinion. And but I'm really glad that it happened. I gotta be honest with you, like I was 80 grand short going into December, and I didn't do it all myself. Like I sold a lot of Cutco at the mall that I was working, and I was just on a rampage with customers, just closing everyone. But it was I also had a handful of our team members that worked other malls that I used to work that came in really clutch. Like we
When the
have
ROR flows, the team grows, man. We are
yes,
trying to get on
100%.
your guys' level of the ROR love. So maybe real quick, just because I know it's an area of opportunity and we're getting better in Michigan and in Indiana, but what like if you had to speak to anybody who pushes back on anything that promotes ROR based on a fear of like, I don't know, losing an order or whatever, what's your general just philosophy on that?
So I got a short answer and a long answer.
Yeah,
So the short answer is simple, and because I've had this question brought to me numerous times,
yeah.
I think the short answer when you have someone that's maybe resistant to the idea of having an ROR program, because there's the fear of loss, the immediate loss of I lost the 5 piece, I lost the flatware, I lost the upgrade to another rep on the team, that worked with them in the past. I think the short term thinking is like I lose the immediate CPO, but we gain the long term culture. And so the idea is like whenever a coordinator or a rep, maybe challenges me on this headspace, a lot of times they bring up valid points. Like the points they bring up, I'm like, I totally understand your logic. I totally get where you're coming from. I think what a better way to put that all together is like if you're going to be here for the long haul, if you really have true intentions of staying here for not just a year or two, but 5, 10, maybe even 20 plus years, it's a lot more fun as a program to have a positive culture versus a scarcity culture. And I know sometimes people take a little like, oh, like personal poke whenever the word scarcity gets brought up about their way of thinking. But I even tell like a couple of people like on our local team. So there's two programs I'm a part of, like with Lone Star and with Gulf Coast. And so with those two programs, the vast majority of the people are on board with it. But I think the greatest example of like ROR program, or one of the greatest example, maybe probably the greatest example, is the TGP program with Brian Carter and his crew. And I've been friends with them a long time, and I've gotten lucky enough to work their fairs the last couple of years. And when you're immersed into the trenches with the culture, I remember saying this at a meeting a couple of years ago with them, where there's basically 3 ways to view ROR, like on a team. There is no program, there is a program, and then there is a culture, and they're very different. And I would make the strongest argument they're probably one of the best examples of having an ROR culture. And to be honest with you, their payouts are very small. It ranges from 10 to 15%. but you have people writing up fat orders for each other all the time. And that comes from a place of not payout, that comes from obvious culture that's been built over a very long period of time, people that have bought into what they're doing. And something I told one of our teams a couple of years ago is that the way to get ROR to work is that everyone has to be on the same page. I'm not saying that 100% of people have to agree with it. I'm saying 100% of people need to respect each other. It's if you have 15 people on your team, it needs to be a 15-way street. If you have 50 people on your team, it's got to be a 50-way street. And I think once we swallow the pill that not everyone is always going to be on board with it, that's okay. I can sleep well at night knowing that. But at the end of the day, whenever these people do challenge me, I always push back on them just a little bit and just say, man, dude, I really hope someday you wake up in the morning and you see the bigger picture.
And I think
So,
one theme that I'm realizing exists with the best people involved in the events program, whether it's a coordinator or a leader, a top CSP, is it's grateful versus greedy. They're always looking like just in the way you commented on something that had nothing to do with this. You said, I'm also part of TGPs and Brian Carter, and I'm lucky enough to be a part of a couple of their events. Like when somebody's on the wrong end of this conversation with ROR, a lot of times it's, I deserve fill in the blank. It's just this grateful, and I don't know where that started. I know I talked to Josh Mueller a lot, and I know he's big on this. And I think, it sounds like Brian's huge on it too. Grateful versus greedy. I just think there's so much there. Let's come back to one more thing outside of, it could be inside of Cutco, in or out of the business. But what's something that maybe it's in the works? Maybe somebody listening to this right now doesn't even know it exists. Maybe it's an order, a program, a business relationship that you're excited about.
I mean, that's a big question, right? So when you ask things like, what's the next thing coming down the pipeline? Do you have any examples that you're thinking of, or because I just want to
So
make
it could be events team driven. It could be, I don't know if you're involved in federal at all. It could be a new program that's emerging. It could be something that your team is working on from an event standpoint that's going to impact nationally. What's something that it's kind of in the works?
I can't speak for everyone, but one of my roles with Cutco as of last August was so I got this national consulting role. And so me, Alicia Andor, and Josh Mueller, basically Cutco wants us to work with programs across the country because there's just a lot of different ways of doing things. Yeah. And they want us to be able to take the best practices. And a trend that I've noticed so when you say like what's coming, I've noticed a really healthy trend of DVMs, teams, and coordinators that have been very supremely open to changing the way they do things, whether it's on a structural level, an advancement level, even all the way down to like how they pick shifts. Like there's just such an array of differences on how programs are ran. And what I found in this, it's been a little over a year now or so. I have 10 different teams I work with, and there's 10 different ways they do things. And so all my job is just to try and just give perspective. And so when I'm giving perspective, sometimes I get really surprised by how people, sometimes they're still doing things the way they used to 15 years ago. And a saying that I like to bring up is like if I'm at a coordinator meeting or something, it's like, hey, a coordinator in 2023 is very different than a coordinator in 2013. And just that 10-year gap, like sales and CPO has tremendously changed in the events world. And this is going to be one of the biggest pillars of Cutco for the foreseeable future that I can think of. So yeah, when I would say like what's come down the pipeline, it's hard to say of anything new. Obviously, I don't want to bring up anything that, shouldn't be shared exactly publicly. But the main thing I would want to make sure to say is like, I'm just glad that teams and coordinators and division managers are really diving in deep and being open to making changes and are actually accepting those changes. I've been very proud of the teams that I've worked with so far, and they've really done a good job. I don't want to say cleaning house, but cleaning things up a little bit and kind of modernizing systems and being more efficient on how they do things. There's a lot of CPO left on the table, and a lot of teams are starting to realize that now.
And I don't want this to come off as passive aggressive, but it sounds like you're saying
let's go.
It sounds like you're saying those who are open-minded and don't believe their way is the best way tend to grow and get better results. Adapt or die, or in this case, adapt or get left behind, right?
Yeah, it's and by the way, I'm not by any means saying that we do things the best way. Like
But
Lone
that's
Star
your point.
Coast.
You're so self-aware that, hey, we might be doing this part best right now on November 7th, 2023. Somebody could come up with something better than us, and we're open-minded changing it if so.
Absolutely. I am the master of thieves. And so basically what I say is like, if you
It's
ask
a
for
lot, dude. It's a lot easier than having to have all the answers. I've
I,
tried to live that leadership life before. Shoot me now. Like not fun. Not fun.
it's, I think that if people just own the fact that it's not about who's right, it's about what's right. It's like, hey, I don't have to be the creator of all the best programs. Like me speaking, like as any coordinator in the company, it's, I don't have to be the person that thinks of everything. I can think of one or two good things that are great. Like if we have a staple on anything, I believe our team is the best team at recruiting and retaining young reps. Like I feel like that's what our staple has been for a while. That's why we have a big team. That's why we do the most events. But at the same time, though, we don't have the best averages. I'm well aware of that. Like there are changes that I need to make as a coordinator and some new things I need to update. Like what is Bert Wicks and North Star doing? What is Matt Foss and Alan Hernandez
You might
doing?
want to listen to our last episode of season 1 to find out what Bert Wicks is doing. You might want to. Hey, I'll send it. I'll send you the link. When you're looking at growing an events team, and you work with a couple, you said 10 different ones now, so that's you not only have your own perspective, but like the perspective of a couple different situations. When an events team is looking to go from $1 million in sales and make that jump to 2 million, and a lot of times in Vectron and Cutco, we're pretty unrealistic. Like doubling in a year is not something that most companies, like, you get laughed at for that a lot of places, but people do it here. So when you're looking at making that jump from $1 million to 2 million, what's the most common success factors that teams achieve to make that happen?
Good question. So I got a mental answer and then I got a tangible answer. So I think the first part mental is that I think you just have to understand that it is possible to go from 1 million to 2 million in 1 year, depending on your team situation. There are certain programs that have opportunities that can literally jump $1 million in sales. At the same time, though, I think that people have to also remember, like, hey, you also have to make fundamental, tangible changes that are going to serve you they're going to serve you different getting to a $2 million program versus a $1 million program. This is actually a great question for me personally, because I took over for Pat Sides and I took over for him about, I want to say 6 years ago. And he took over for Josh Mueller years before that. And so I'm like the luckiest like coordinator of all time because I have like the greatest lineage ever. No offense to anyone else, but like going from Josh to Pato to me, like that's like super easy transition.
I don't
Like
think anybody's arguing with that, and if they do argue with it, then they'll get told to be quiet very quickly. So
tell them to kick rocks. It's fine. But the main thing is like Josh was like the pioneer where he literally just imagined a forest and he just paved it down and then just cleared out all the trees. And then he had Pato come in and actually put the groundwork in the dirt. All I'm doing is just making the road look pretty. And I'm just making little adjustments as we go. And so there are things that we used to do because I used to be Pato's assistant for a couple of years before I was coordinator. And Pato had a way of doing things. A lot of it I really liked, like the recruiting, the retention, the meetings, and all this other stuff. But when I was
are you about to tell me that you changed some programs?
possibly so.
Oh,
I mean, it's
like recording. This guy's off the rails.
I know, blasphemy, right? But but I think very just openly just be aware of like doing a self audit of your program every year. And I think one of the hardest things that people do, and I've been guilty of this as well, is that when you get to a certain point with Cutco, you have to really challenge yourself consistently on being like, am I still the best version of myself? And am I still open-minded to growing? Like I've run into that roadblock before where I'm like, I think we're the best at this thing. And that may be true at one point in time. Getting to $1 million when I took over, because I took over right as Lone Star did $1 million 6 years ago. And that stuff was great, but I noticed a lot of things in there. I was like, we need to change these things. That's not going to get us to 2, and that's not going to get us to 3. And so it's like, okay, so we had to change the way we do meetings. I had to change the way I worked with reps. I had to implement workshops. I had to do all these other things. And just really just focus on volume. So this is a long answer, but here's the end of it, is one of the easiest formulas that we've always followed. So a lot of people don't know this, like we may not have a large single event, like a state fair type thing in our area. We used to have this event called the San Antonio Rodeo, did about 150K. We lost it. We're still trying to get it back. But even outside of that, I still believe that programs, if they just focus on recruiting a big team, retaining that team, and consistently never stop developing people into CSP status, you're going to naturally, just by pure volume and averages, be able to sell $2 or $3 million. Rising Sun's proving that right now. Rising Sun also doesn't have a large single event. They have like these Maricopa home shows. They've grown to like over 100K now, which is great. But they did $3 million last year, and they did like 400 or 500 events. And they have a large team. Their program is built very similar to ours. They just definitely outsold us last year. So I would just tell people, like, if you don't know where to start, are you good at your recruiting? Are you good with your retention? Are you actually good at developing your reps to get from baby status to CSP status? And do you have a system in place where people fully feel like they can grow, to where it doesn't feel unattainable, to where you have a tier system, you have a clear path of advancement, and then just be patient. There's a term I heard, I want to say about a year ago, that I've told a few people now. It's about having aggressive patience. And I think that's something that we forget along the way. Like, you can't just sit on your hands and just expect things to happen. Like the whole saying, good things come to those who wait. That's true to a degree, but it's mostly not in our business. And so I think people have to understand, like, work as hard as you can, do as much as you possibly can, but gosh dang it, you can't expect it to flip in 3 months. And so there's been DVMs that I've spoken to. They're like, all right, how do we make our CSP culture better? And I'm like, time. That's the first one. It's going to take time. The second thing is patience. And the third thing is love and support. And I think that there's a lot of other things that go into it, but for time purposes, I'll kind of, I guess, dock it at that.
There are CSPs everywhere they're listening in the car, pounding their dashboard, saying louder, louder for my DVM here in blank. It's so true though. Like I love aggressive patience. It's micro aggressive, macro patient. Love it.
Working with Trent Booth and the Veritas Leadership Group over the last decade has unlocked things within me that I never knew existed until they were coached out of me. If you're listening and you feel stuck or like you have another gear that you're having a hard time getting to, Trent's offering a free intro call to any of our listeners. I love Veritas because it's an amazing combo of mentoring and coaching. I get what I need when I need it most. It's also a flat monthly rate, which is awesome for anyone looking to give it a shot with no contract and no long-term commitment. Schedule a call with Trent today by going to linktree/CSP60. That's linktr.ee/CSP60. That's linktree/CSP60 with a dot before the two E's.
What goes, you talked a little bit about programs and kind of the big pillars of creating a big team. What I've loved watching from afar is the culture that it would appear many of the teams you work with have, and you've spoke a little bit too about it already. What goes into creating a culture where you brought up earlier, it's maybe not all 15 people agree, but all 15 people are on the same page? What goes into creating a culture where your team is all rowing in the same direction?
Also a good question. So we've had our years with great culture, and we've also had our years of like not great culture. I'm guilty of it. And I think one of the things that I've had to realize as a coordinator is that, and this is me, I'm probably speaking to coordinators' heart and souls right now. I've realized that when you take on the role of being a coordinator, quote unquote, we'll call it again, quotations, the leader of the program. The objective is when you're in any type of leadership role, everything is always your fault. So if you come from a program where you have bad culture, it may not be your fault, but it is your problem, but it is your fault at the end of the day. Because when you take on that position, you also accept the responsibility of what comes with it. So I think when people start, I call this reshape. Brandon Brown said this really well. He was talking about like a script with like how to sell and stuff. But he had a really good saying I liked, where about reframing the expectations, like break apart your current ones, reframe new ones. And I really liked that. And one of the things that I've applied that to with being a coordinator is being like, because I've had people come to me fairly recently saying like, man, I love the way we do things, but I just don't feel like we're family. Like, I don't feel like we're tight. Like, we don't hang out anymore. We do our meetings, we check our boxes, we hit our standards, we sell a bunch of cut. We're all cool with each other, but we don't eat dinner together anymore. We don't hang out anymore. And so when you say things like, you know, the 15 people example, right? It's like, I think we have a really good steady culture from the DVM with Stacy and Kathy, like in their two divisions. And then just being able to be at the front center of the table, being like, okay, are you going to be a coordinator that's going to have the respect of your people? And I think this is an example that I thought of like years ago is so we run separate meetings. We run meetings for our CSP group, like the people that qualify at the top levels. And we also run monthly meetings for our like newer tier. And something I've told many coordinators is that like, how do you run a team meeting? I'm like, they're totally different meetings firsthand.
Right.
When you're with the young reps and I run that monthly meeting, think of yourself as like a big long table and you're at the head of the table. Your job is just direct, do, and love. But when you're in the other room with like all your leaders, like think of it as like King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. So everyone has a say, everyone has an opportunity, and they're all a part of it. They don't feel like they're shut out, is maybe the best way to put it. But also,
I mean, you're describing the difference between mentoring and collaboration, right? Like those new reps need mentored, they need led, they need it's kind of like I don't want to talk about others' parenting styles or anything like that, but for me, I'm big on like I am going to train my children up the right way that I believe I see fit, so that way that when they are older, they can handle things on their own. Versus I have friends that there's 3-year-olds and they're like, oh, let them figure it out. Let them figure it out, bro. Like we need to teach them and you know, and beyond that's mentoring. Collaboration is once they've proven like, hey, I am a Cutco sales professional who has things to provide. And I'm a leader on the team. Now it's collaboration. Did you think of that? Did that just kind of evolve into what that CSP team meeting became over time? How did that come about?
It's going to sound silly. It was just something that just came off the cuff one day.
Yep.
And just being like, I don't think the coordinator is someone that's like beyond question by any means. And like, regardless, like whatever is going on with different situations, like when you're a coordinator and you look inward, like, are you doing the role because you're just trying to get your shifts? Or are you doing the role because you have a purpose of trying to grow the program as a whole? Because being a coordinator, like, it's very easily where you could take it into a selfless benefit or a selfish benefit. But at the same time, though, if you're disciplined and you have the right intentions, then it's more built for a person that's trying to just provide and protect and push opportunity for the people in your area. I love the people I work with, top down, from Josh Mueller all the way to the baby reps. I genuinely love seeing our reps go from like young status to like higher end status. Like we have probably about half of our CSPs are under the age of 25. The other half are over the age of 30. And so it's like, there's a big gap. We have like 15 or 16 CSPs just in Lone Star, and Gulf Coast has like 13 now or something. And so I think the point of all this being is that if you're a coordinator listening right now, you're a DVM listening right now, and if you're running an events program, are you really being honest with yourself? Do you have the right intentions? I hate saying it because I love the coordinators in our business. There are a couple of coordinators that maybe aren't the right person for the role in 2023 era.
We've made a shift as a company for sure, where it's not just being a butt kicker that gets you promoted and elevated. It's doing the right things and putting the team getting the team to perform at a high level to help as many others as you can. That wasn't always the case, right? Like I think coordinator was like, oh, we've got these people that sell a lot at fairs and shows. We got some people that want to be involved. Let's just, who sold the most? You're coordinator. Talk to you in December for our year-end meeting. Great job. If you need some tents, let me know. Maybe I'll kick in $10 or something. So it's definitely evolved for the better. I think company-wide we're viewing leadership roles a lot differently than we used to. How can team members, Dante, best support their coordinator? Now, I know I'm basically asking you to tell me what you would ask your team for. So I'm don't feel like I'm asking you. This is not you complaining or you like genuinely like if I'm a team member out there, if I'm not a coordinator and I'm like, well, what can I do to better support my coordinator? Because I said for a long time, like, man, we used to have an issue in one of our teams where coordinator it came up of, well, what does a coordinator actually do? And I decided to lead a kind of an exercise on, let's talk about what the coordinators do. And by the end of that conversation, it was, we can't pay the coordinators enough. Thank you guys so much, right? What can team members do to really better support their coordinators?
I would say, don't be the problem. Making sure that whatever you're doing, I just had a conversation with one of our CSPs actually this last week, and I worked an event with them. And they have a different point of view on how we do a certain thing in our program. And I just remember telling them, like, they're like, I just don't agree with it. And I tried to, I hope someday you wake up, but ultimately this has been a conversation for years. And I just remember wrapping up the convo just saying, like, hey, as long as you're not bringing down the culture and you're not influencing people in a negative way, then we're good. Your concerns are valid. I totally get where you're coming from. But if your objective is to try and make a better culture with what we're doing right now, then don't be the reason why it goes backwards. How about that?
I love that conversation. Like, it's like, hey, you can be frustrated, you can not like it. And as long as we keep this dialogue and this communication open, we're going to work through it. So as long as it doesn't become something that makes you jaded or makes you lash out or makes you irritable to other team members, hey, I'm good. But the second you feel like this is affecting how I'm treating others on the team, let's talk, right? How long did it take you to level up your conversations around that type of stuff? Because I, as a new leader, I really bulldoze people. This is how we're doing it. If you don't like it, right? Bye. But it's having empathy, right? Like, it's like, hey, I'm in their perspective. I can see why they're feeling this way. Was there a moment? Was there something that happened that caused you to shift your mindset around things like that?
It was years ago, and it was when I was a new coordinator. And I remember Brian Carter helping me with these situations. There are certain things that I feel personally very strongly about. Anyone that works with me knows, like, Dante's kind of a hard ass when it comes to standards. Like, I've had a couple of CSPs who are Hall of Famers who didn't hit standards, and they got bumped down to the monthly meetings, and they had to sit in a room with 30K reps for a campaign until they got
Let me
back.
guess. They never missed the standard again, right? Like,
Most of them. One of them did miss it again, but they made it back, and then they lost it again, but then they made it back again. But all it does is level them up. And so I just had so leveling up the conversation. So Brian Carter helped me out a lot with that, because we feel very strongly about standards and how to do things and stuff like that. But I think that over a period of time, I had to do a good job at just really making sure I gathered my thoughts before every conversation I knew was going to be challenging. And the hardest conversations to have those with are your close friends. And I've said now recently that the best thing and the worst thing about Cutco is that we're all friends. And so one of the hardest things to do as a coordinator is to play that balance beam between, am I still going to have a friend at the end of this conversation? And are they still going to respect me as their leader, as the coordinator? And I think DVMs run across this issue all the time. And so it just maybe doesn't get talked about that much, because DVMs obviously are like, they have to have hard conversations too, but how can they do it in a way where they don't basically push the rep or push the manager away? Not saying we're all not going to have moments of weakness. I have them too.
It's such a high level skill that really takes your leadership to a new level, though, because the alternatives are have the conversation the wrong way, piss people off and lose great people, or worse, have them stay and talk bad about you. Or the other option is to shy away and never have the conversation. And that doesn't help grow the team or help that person. I just posted about this the other day. I had somebody that brought a unfortunate situation to me, and it would lead to me having a tough conversation with somebody on our team. And they said, I'm so sorry that you have to deal with this. I used to reply, Dante, and say, hey, it's part of the title. It's just at being DVM. That's one of my responsibilities. And I realized, like, no, like I said, hey, I go, no, actually, you don't apologize. Thank you. Because tough conversations are necessary to help our people get better. And I can't wait to have this conversation. And to your point, it's like changing the mindset around that, gathering my thoughts. Hey, not I need to have this conversation, but I get to have this conversation. It sounds like Brian Carter played a big role in your development as a coordinator.
Yeah, and I feel bad because there's more people involved in it, but
Sure.
for every different people have influenced me at a high level, and I wouldn't be where I am today without these key people. I'm a strong believer that you can't succeed at a high level without other people. That's to some degree.
Yeah.
So like real quick shout out,
Yeah.
Brian Carter helped me, Josh Mueller has helped me, Stacey Campbell has helped me immensely. I mean, I've had a number of people out there, just random here and there, that have really helped me through this process. And I'm nothing but grateful for it. Even like whenever you have your lowest moments in your life, like you have to think back and stay focused on the people that helped you get to a certain point and maintaining a positive and grateful attitude all the way through. So yeah, I got nothing but gratefulness for those people plus the others involved.
I think there's so much that DVMs and event coordinators, there's a lot of similarities there. There's some crossover. I would love to see a DVM coordinator summit someday. That'd be pretty amazing.
I think it's very needed.
Yeah. Hey, dude.
Dave Bush, John Kane, let's get on this.
Yeah, come on, boys. Let's do it. Where is it in the budget? We'll pay to go. Just tell us where to go. We'll figure
I'll buy my own ticket. I don't care.
We don't need to go to the Four Seasons. We can go to Red
As long
Roof
as I have the
Inn.
casino, that's all I care about. It's fine.
During the course of the year, I'm sure there's times where there are occurrences that maybe happen and it's like, ooh, that's not in the policy document, or oh, that's new. You've been talking a lot about, some tough combos. How do you do what's fair in the moment and then moving forward to prevent occurrences from like that happen again? I'm sure to some extent they're unavoidable and some shouldn't be black and white. Some need some subjectivity. How do you handle that? And what do you do to try to prevent it as much as possible at the same time?
For sure. There's a process to this. So if I get dealt a situation to me that is not on our books, like it's one of those situations it hasn't happened before, it has happened, we haven't added to the policy, right? So it's like, well, technically, Dante, they pull up their lawyer glasses. Technically, Dante, it's not in here.
In section 3, subpoint 2.
Exactly. I'm like, okay, are we playing Settlers of Catan right now? Are we lawyering? Like, what's going on here? But the main thing is like, hey, when someone brings me a conversation and it's not already in our policy document, I never make a decision during the first conversation. I try my hardest. Actually, I don't even try anymore. I do my darnest to not give in to the one side of the story. So usually when something gets dealt to me, it's usually from the rep more times than not. And regardless who brings it to me first, I find out who all's involved. Okay, well, before anything happens, I have to talk to everyone, right? And so obviously I have conversations with everyone. I do my due diligence. The second thing is like I sleep on it. And and these are for the harder ones, right? The harder conversations.
Mm-hmm.
I sleep on it. And then I forgot to mention this during the intro and stuff like that. I'm a big nerd, Brett. Anything nerdy you can think of, I've been a part of it at some point in my life. And so one of the things I really love are the Marvel movies. And there's a movie called Infinity War, and spoiler alert for anyone, just block out the audio right now. But there's a moment in that movie where Doctor Strange and all the Avengers, or most of the Avengers, are fighting Thanos, and then he does this whole thing where he like goes forward in time, like 14 million plus different outcomes, right? And then he finds the one that works. So this is the best way I can put this. I sleep on it. I think of all the different possible outcomes, good, positive, negative. And I try and think of the best possible outcome that benefits the program, not the individual.
What I love about this example, my wife and I had never watched Marvel until COVID, like Iron Man back in the day, but that's it. So we binged 40 hours pretty quick. I mean, it was.
I'm so happy for you right now. That's great.
It's kind of embarrassing, but pretty amazing. So the reason I love that example is they're pissed at Doctor Strange in the moment. Like they're like, what, bro, what? But he was willing to do what no one else was willing to do to at least have a shot. Have you had those moments where there's an individual on the team pissed at you initially and then they come back afterwards like, dude, my bad.
Absolutely. Oh, I have a person on our Lone Star team that is like one of my best friends. And like this person has just a big shell about like little bit rough around the edges, but when you get past that, has an amazing heart.
Mhm.
And so, but is very strongly opinionated about things. And so I understand that my conversations with this person are going to be much different than literally anybody else. So yeah, there's been multiple times where this person's come to me and been like, bro, dude, what the heck? Da 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 da. This is
I'm
so
sure
below.
those are the only words they use. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Of course, I might be doing the G-rated version. Like, but the thing is, like, they're like, this is all crap, whatever.
Yeah.
And then I receive all the positive, thoughtful, well thought out feedback. And then afterwards, yeah, like I tell them, I walk them through why we're doing this. They don't agree with it. But 9 times out of 10 later on, like a day, a week, a month later or so, they're like, you know what? I may not agree with it, but I freaking respect you, man. Freaking respect you. And I'm just like, then that's all that matters, dude. Like, all that matters is like, as long as we have mutual respect while we have disagreement, then that's just called being an adult. And I'm really excited that you are part of this program. I want to keep you here for a long time. And that's why they're one of my best friends in the business, because it's like we can have those conversations with a really strong personality. And even though they don't agree, they still respect the process.
So those coordinators out there listening that you've had tough decisions to make, whatever the case may be, what I'm hearing is what I loved. I never make a decision after the first conversation. I get all of the details I can. I step back on my own, think it all over, maybe journal out, here's all the different routes we could go, sleep on it. And then once I come to that decision, as long as my heart's in the right place and I want what's best for the team, I will make that decision unapologetically. And I brace myself for there's going to be
Brace
pushback.
for impact.
That's okay. That's okay, because something Trent Booth has coached me on over the years. The process was good. If I got a tough decision to make and after the fact I'm second guessing myself, if the process was good, trust the process. Don't let any person or situation like, no, the process was good. Love that. My favorite part of that was just not making a decision after the first conversation. I've been guilty of that before, of just sometimes we can go on a power surge of like, oh yeah, this is definitely what we need to do. Having to backtrack that is not fun. Let's just put it that way. Okay, so with the size team that you have, what you've obviously got more than just you doing some leadership roles, getting compensated in some way, shape, or form, whether it's through shifts before they go to the rest of the team, maybe it's a picking order, maybe it's pay for some. When do you make the choice to compensate someone for helping the team versus it just that's you're being a good team player? When does that shift happen?
It's different for everyone,
Mhm.
but I definitely believe that you're going to personally hit a threshold where you realize that you need help. And I think that coordinators, and I am very guilty of this, because for the longest time, Brett, the longest time, I was like, I can do it all. I'm a hard worker. I'm very efficient. I can do it all. I can do it all. Horrible way of thinking. As things begin to scale, then I understand, like, okay, I physically can't do it all. My brain will not process everything. I will forget things. And I think once people start realizing, like, when you start slipping, you need help yesterday. And so whenever I first came in as a coordinator, I definitely knew I was going to need help right away. So I did hire people from the team that wanted to help. And I did pay them out of pocket since day one. And those roles have changed over time. And we've kind of moved around in different ways. We have our ways of compensating, which are different than most places. But the main thing is just really identify the things that you just shouldn't be doing anymore. Like, for example, I don't do booking requests. I haven't done booking requests in years because I need to be focused on growing our key events. I need to be focused on having good relationships with the promoters and the mall managers of our best spots, right? That's what I need to be doing. I don't do chargebacks. I haven't done chargebacks in also years. I have other people that do chargebacks. It's easy money for them, and I have peace of mind that it's done. I mean, the list goes on. I have a number of roles for different people, but but I definitely got to a point where I fell off and I didn't keep replenishing some of the assistants as they grew into their CSP role and just they couldn't dedicate the time to it anymore. But I'm really happy now going into this next year that both programs are going to have 4 to 5 team assistants doing different things, and they're all going to be on pay. Like, I take care of all of them, and they're going to good thing. We choose not to go the shifts route. That's just a personal choice.
Mhm.
There's more than one right answer to this, as Brian likes to say. And I'm not saying other ways are wrong. I'm just saying this is the route we chose, and
Every
it's worked for
team,
us.
every territory is different, right? Some are heavy where 2 of their shows per year account for 50% of their CPO or more. Some are like, it's very, very even. So like some
Mhm.
are big on, hey, we've got multiple divisions involved. I love that there's the awareness of we try to get it right for our team, but we're open-minded to the fact that there's more than one way. As you said, you work with 10 teams and they all do things a little bit differently, which is that's positive, that's normal.
Mhm.
Um, why have you leaned into coordinator so hard, Dante? Why not just be a top rep who goes and sells a ton of Cutco? Or even like I would compare the coordinator route to DM or DVM, even like why coordinator?
Oh man. Um, I know the answer to this. It's just I'm very strongly opinionated about it.
Yeah.
The let me see how I can put this the right
We're
way.
not here for the soft answers, all right? It is election day when we're recording this, but let's not be politically correct here.
I'll send you my answers to the secret ballot stuff later. But the um so Brett, I know a lot of people in other regions don't know my story,
Uh-huh.
but my early days of Cutco, when I say my early years of Cutco, um, were an immense struggle to say the least.
Mhm.
Immense struggle. And I think a lot of people can relate to that.
Yeah.
And whenever I was branched a few times, I was Dom for a few years and stuff like that. And I always was passionate about that. Um, I'm glad I've succeeded to a certain level as a rep. And I don't think I'm ever going to be passionate enough to sell $1 million in a year as a rep. Um, but from day one, being on the events program and seeing Pato run a meeting, I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to be able to take these kids that maybe aren't the most talented, maybe they're not the best, and just be able to wrap my arms around them and just really make them something that they probably didn't even think that they could be. And that goes, I wrestled in high school. I was very not good the first year, but I was very great by the end of it. And so my path with Cutco followed a very similar path to wrestling. And I really can't think of anything in my life that I've been good at from day one. I'm
Mm.
just not naturally gifted at a lot of things. I don't know why. It just is what it is. And so I feel very passionate about being a coordinator because I've seen a number of reps come through that have all the potential in the world and they just need guidance and they just need support and direction. Now, as we know, like not every rep is going to live up to their potential. And I've swallowed that pill a long time ago. And but there are certain reps that I've worked with one on one or just on the team in general and stuff. And it's hard because I know this is a long answer to this, but I just care so much about trying to get every single rep to just be great. You know, I think a good example of this, by the way, very recently, about 2 months ago, I ran a meeting for Gulf Coast, and it was one of our monthly meetings. So I drove over to Houston, we had all the young reps there doing their thing, and then we were in role playing sessions, so they were all broken up, drill for skill. And we have this one new girl that's there, and this new girl sold a good amount of Cutco, just joined the team, but was unbelievably not confident in herself.
Mhm.
And I've seen this from guys and girls, but the recent one is this girl. And I remember watching her role play and she was just stutter stepping the whole time, just couldn't even get through it. Um, and so I moved the other rep away into like another room, like a hallway, like, hey, rep, go role play over there. Like, I need to manage this situation.
Yep.
And so I just remember sitting down with her and I was like, hey, role play with me and don't worry about anything. Let's just go through the words. And I just remember like being revitalized because sometimes we just have these moments where we forget why we're doing this. And I kind of forgot that a little bit this year.
Mm.
And then just sitting down with that rep and then just having her fall apart in front of me was just heartbreaking. And just being able to like just go, hey, let's pause, let's talk this out real quick. Is everything okay? And being able, and we're just sitting there in like a little office at like 8:30 at night because we run our meetings pretty late.
Yep.
And it's like 8:30 at night. And she just tells me, she's like, I just don't think I'm going to be good at this. I'm not good at selling Cutco. And we had a conversation about that for a few minutes on the reasons. By the time it was all said and done, like we role played again and she got through it. She wasn't perfect, but that's not what's important. And I just remember afterwards, she grabbed me as we were leaving the office to go eat dinner and stuff, like with everyone. And she just grabbed me and she was like, that made such a difference to me. Like, I'm excited about working my next event because she worked an event, she didn't do well. She's like, I actually feel like I can kind of do this now. And I just drove home that night with just like a smile from ear to ear, just being like, if anything came from that meeting today, it was that one girl being able to have confidence that she can do this. And that was a good reminder to me of, yeah, that's why I do this. And I've had little moments with a bunch of reps over the years. But the main thing, the point I'm trying to make is that's why I love doing this. And that's why I want to be a coordinator forever.
There's gonna be like ups and downs in any leadership role that we have. And I think a lot of times, especially those of us that Cutco is all we know, because we started when we were in college. And it's like, oh, I'm in a rut right now. It's because it's Cutco. Or, oh, I feel a certain way. Oh, it's Cutco. Like, no, man, that's just leadership. That's just sales. That's just like, it's gonna happen. And your willingness, your 20 seconds of courage I bet it was like, dude, it's 8:30. We got to still go out to eat. My wife, I'm away. Ugh.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna go. Hey, Johnny Rep, you go in the other room, role play. Hey, what's going? 20 seconds of courage to do that. Huge. You got rewarded for that, let alone her. And my point I want to make on that is a couple of things you said. Number one, our company's evolution of the perspective of who's a CSP and who's a manager has dramatically changed over the last 10 years. Like, I remember coming up in the business and it was kind of like, oh, at least how I came up. Oh, you're not impressive enough to be a manager. Go sell. Or, ooh, you're the all-American type looking human. You're a manager. Now, I would argue we have as many impressive, polished, amazing business owner CSPs as we do on the management side of things, if not more. Like, it's truly like a branch supports events, supports brand. Like when it's done correctly, and I think your program is one that's modeling it. It is a beautiful win-win-win situation, and it should be. It should be. And I think it's healthy, to your point earlier of, you said you had a tough go at it your first couple of years in leadership. I think it's healthy to realize that, hey, I'm on the right bus, but I'm in the wrong seat. And I'm frustrated, but to your point earlier, macro patience, microaggression. Like, hey, I'm open-minded to find the right seat. I want to find it right now, but I'm on the right bus. Loved that story, and thank you for going. You said long stories are the reason for the podcast. It's 60 minutes of fire, not 6 minutes. Last question before my last question.
Okay.
Right? How do you manage running an events team at the level you are and selling simultaneously? You sold over 300 grand last year for the year, and I think that gets overlooked. But you still run. That's my reminder to wrap up. But you run an amazing events team, and you help a bunch of others. What would be your keys to doing those two things at the same time?
Man, that's a tough one to answer.
Yeah.
This may sound cliche, I suppose, but I think just understanding that we can do more if you want to do more. I think that if people care about, if they are passionate about what they're doing and they're semi good at it, I think people would be amazed at what they can accomplish. Again, like, I don't believe I'm the most talented rep by a mile, but I work hard enough. I have enough opportunity with my schedule at this point to be able to sell that much Cutco. I definitely could sell more Cutco personally if I really focused on that. But I just love consulting. I love being a coordinator, and I just love the people that I work with and what we're all about.
Dude,
So
you found your right seat on the
time.
bus. So don't you dare change seats, and don't you dare get on a different bus. Unless that's what you're compelled and called to do. Okay. last question. What's something I should have asked you today that would have helped our CSP community?
I don't know. You asked some really good questions. I feel like I'm gonna need a second to think about that one, to be honest.
Hey, all good. If it
Should've
comes
asked
to
me.
you interrupt me. You let me know. I think we're in such a unique situation in our company, Dante, where no one's required to give back, but it's weird. Almost everybody does. And you've played a tremendous part in changing the way so many people look at the coordinator role. And you've helped to reshape many of the things we do on a yearly basis that make us all better and we all get to benefit from. So seriously, from our team, from the bottom of my heart, like, thank you for everything that you do. It's awesome to watch.
Well, I appreciate that. That means a lot. But again, like at the end of the day, I can't take credit for all of it. I'm a product of my environment. And so all the people that have built me up into this point over 14 years with Cutco have created 2023 Dante. And so I guess when you going back on that question, I suppose, and like something I should have asked, like I'm sure there's a lot of like tangible, like how-to type questions you can ask, like how do we recruit? How do we do this?
Yes.
I don't know if that's going to be the spot on question for this moment. I think that maybe a good thing to ask is like, when you get to a level of success, how do you handle it without imploding? How do you handle it without letting ego get in the way? How do you handle it without changing who you were to who you are now? And maybe that's the appropriate one to go with for right now, because I mentioned a little bit earlier in this from a previous question, like I kind of lost my way earlier this year.
Mm-hmm.
And some things have happened. And one of the main things that I'm really grateful for is just like, is being able to time to reflect on all this and just really understand like where did it all come from? I think sometimes everyone in this business, when they succeed at a certain level, sometimes develop, they lose track of themselves. And I think if we're talking about coordinators specifically as of right now, I think when coordinators are newer, they're very hungry and they're willing to grow and they're willing to do all these things. And then eventually what happens is, not for everyone, but eventually what could happen is you start to get really good at it and people start looking up to you. And then a lot of people start looking up to you, which is really ironic because I'm 5'4" and people look up to me. But the main thing is that whenever it comes to like the business side of things, it almost got to a point where I felt like I had to be perfect. And because a lot of people would reach out about a bunch of random things all the time. And I was so happy to respond to people right away. And I think between the two programs, we did 3.9 million last year in event sales. And that's a lot of CPO. And I think at some point, like we all start to implode a little bit for different reasons. So like some of the coordinators are on this call right now, or the coordinators are listening to it right now. If you get to a certain point, are you going to be able to are you going to hold to your promise of sticking to your values that you told yourself you would have 5 years ago? And if you feel like you're not going to maintain those values that you set for yourself 5 years from now, you might be heading down a path of like not being in the right role. Maybe you're in that position because you have to be, because your team needs you there as a placeholder. But I think if people really are honest with themselves and being like, hey, these are core fundamental values that I am never going to waver on. So maybe that's the way to put it. These are core fundamental values as a coordinator and as a person I'm not going to waver on, no matter what. And my ideas will change, my philosophies will change over time. But as long as my core values are not disrupted and I don't compromise them, then I think I'm going to be in a good place 5, 10, 20 years from now. Because at the end of the day, we only have our word, we only have our values, we only have our character and our integrity and stuff like that. Everyone's going to have problems and issues and stuff like that. But I think the question you should have asked me is probably, how do you deal with large amounts of success? And I would say the better question is, how do you maintain your values and your integrity whenever you do become successful? How about that?
Dante, I'm pretty glad we gave you some time to think about that last one. Seriously, thank you for everything that you stand for as a leader for our events crews. You are worth looking up to, even at 5'4", as you mentioned, and worth following. It's so much fun to be able to be a part of. You are the interview that I have the most questions left for. So I think that speaks to a part 2 down the road, maybe season 2. We'll see. Do not miss our upcoming CSP Hot Hands interviews. We've got Mike Tutora on November 14th. Adam Stock, not a CSP, but you can only be nominated to be on the podcast. I don't pick, you guys pick. Don't forget, if you're on Spotify or on YouTube, wherever, comment with who you want to see on the show. Adam Stock for some financial tips and advice for our CSP community on November 28th. Josh Mueller, one of Dante's mentors, on November 29th. Brett Wiggins on December 12th, possibly adding one more interview before we close out season 1. Keep an eye out. Submit your questions for upcoming guests. All forms are up and live. Just go to linktr.ee/CSP60. That's linktr.ee/CSP60 with a dot before the 2 E's to submit your questions. This show is not 60 Minutes of Fire without you. We will see you guys next time. Dante, thank you. Thanks for listening. And for some of you watching, I want to remind you that all resources from today can be found at linktree/CSP60. That's linktr.ee/CSP60. That's linktree/CSP60 with a dot before the EE. If you want to be a member of our live Zoom audience for one of our upcoming shows, email bwiggins@vectormarketing.com. That's BWIGGINS@vectormarketing.com. If you loved what you heard today, I'd be honored if you followed, subscribed, or even rated us on whatever platform you use to find your 60 Minutes of Fire. We'll see you next time.